Hello everybody, today's knife review is the Victorinox Electrician. It's one of the A-Locks handled Pioneer series. It cost me £25, which is about €30 or $42 thereabouts. See what you think. Okay, so we're going to try extreme close-up. Don't know if this is going to work. The Victorinox Electrician comes in the usual silver cardboard box. And we have a couple of instruction leaflets. How to open a tin can. And how to use the cable blade. So we'll move those for a minute. Now, the Electrician is one of the Pioneer range with the silver A-Locks handles. 93mm chassis. I don't have any of the other Pioneer range knives to compare it to, such as the Farmer or the ordinary Pioneer. I chose this one over the Farmer because although the Farmer has a saw, I have a very good saw on a couple of other Swiss Army knives, but there's a blade on here that I don't have anything like. So for me, the size comparison is going to once again be the Victorinox Spartan. Now it's only a 91mm knife rather than 93, but for all intents and purposes it's pretty much the same. There are a couple of key differences though. Some of those differences are very obvious and some are a bit less obvious. So the first thing you notice, rather than the metal liners and the plastic scales, we've got the A-Locks textured silver grips, which are very nice. Because the handle construction is different, we don't have the tweezers and toothpick. And the rivets, as you can see, are exposed but very neat. The Swiss Army Victorinox logo on one side, and then a blank field on the other for engraving names or initials. The blade is very similar on both knives, but as you'll see on the Electrician, it's slightly larger. 70mm from the tip to the handle, it's 2 3/4 inches, and it's 63 from the tip to the plunge line, that's 2.5 inches. Key difference though, I don't know if this will pick up on the camera, but the blade stock is noticeably thicker on the Electrician. It may look as though the blade is bent, but the blade has quite a strong taper, being slightly thicker stock and then coming to a nice thin point, but the taper isn't symmetrical. If you can see, one side of the blade follows the centre axis of the knife and the other side tapers in from the outside edge in towards the middle. And when you open the blade, you can still see that the inside edge is straight and parallel with the axis of the knife, and the outside edge tapers in towards it to meet it. That does mean that the bevel and the grind lines aren't exactly centralised, but I'm going to say that that isn't a fault, that is a characteristic of this one-sided taper. The big screwdriver, cap lifter and wire stripper is the same pattern as on the Spartan, but very slightly larger overall. The awl is completely different. On here we have, although it is an awl in the sense that it has a hole, an eye, so that you can thread it and stitch with it, the cutting edge is angled as a reamer for scraping inside surfaces. On the Electrician, the awl is completely different. Rather than side mounted, it's end mounted. It's bigger and it has this 90-degree folded construction, which is going to make it a lot more rigid. It's got a better edge in that it was machined better to start with, but the stock is a bit thicker because on here you have this groove cut in, which makes for a very thin edge there, but it's flat on this side, so it's very pointy, but there's no needle eye hole for stitching. It's just a poker and a reamer. The back springs are a lot stronger on this than on the Spartan, although in fairness this particular Spartan is quite old. The big difference, and the reason I chose this particular Alox Swiss Army knife, is the cable blade. So here, for the small blade on the Spartan and the similar knives to the Spartan, things like the your Tinker and your Climber and things like that, you have an ordinary small pen blade, but here we have quite a substantial, although short, sheep's foot blade. The straight section of the blade has a terminal bevel on either side, although on the back the bevel is quite fine, slightly more pronounced on the front. This side is completely flat other than that terminal bevel. You've got your taper on the inside side if you're right-handed, and this curved cutaway is for stripping insulation off cable. As you can see there, it's completely flat on this side and beveled only on that side, so that section is a proper chisel grind, whereas we have a bevel on either edge for the straight section. It is tempting to see that as a finger choil, and if you're into wood carving that would be quite useful as a finger choil, but it's not. I'll drop in a picture here, a close-up of the instructions showing how that curved edge is used to strip cable insulation. The fit and finish is generally quite good. The parts all fit together smooth, they're all cleanly stamped, the mirror polish is all bright and shiny. But there's a problem on this, and I want to throw this out as a question because I've never come across this before. It's the first Alox knife I've had. The edges of the scales are quite frankly tatty. This might not come out on the camera, but I'll try and drop in a close-up here. And I think you can see from that close-up the raggedy edge, which can be seen on most of the full length of each of the scales, which is a bit disappointing because I've never come across any scruffiness on a Victorinox before, and I'd be interested to know if that's just par for the course or whether I have got a poorly finished one. The weight is 69.7 grams, which is 2.45 ounces. And in practice, I don't think you notice any difference between this and the Spartan. There's no keyring loop, but I don't think that's a problem. I think it looks nice and neat and clean without it. So there we have it. I like this. I particularly like that sheep's foot blade. I think that's going to be very useful. A bit disappointed by the raggedy edges on the scales, but it's not going to put me off the Alox handle knives. I'd like to get a couple of the colours, maybe the green or the orange. It's just a case of what I can find that's available. So overall I would recommend it, but I bear in mind that if this raggedy finish is typical, you might find that a bit disappointing, as I did. So thanks for watching.